Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Did you have a nice break? Now it's my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Anna Eimbrock from the YIPP agency in Amsterdam. I remember precisely how I first met the YIPP team. I got in touch with you 3 years ago when I was interviewing people about digital storytelling for the Spokes magazine. You told me about transmedia experiences. You came to the Ecsite conference in Porto. You became a sponsor, and here you are today. How are you, Anna?
I'm really good. How are you?
Good. So, Anna, today you're going to tackle a question that is on every exhibition maker's minds: how to adapt our designs and experiences to the new constraints and expectations brought about by COVID-19. Not only will visitors want more square meters per person in the next few months or years, but many of them will re-enter our buildings with altered tactile habits. Will they dare pressing a button or touching a screen again? How can we turn these changing attitudes and behaviors into a creative opportunity? We are so curious to hear your thoughts. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Raquel. Hi. Thanks. Well, hello. Really, really nice to see all of you digitally rather than in person now. But it's been a really, really interesting day already, following all the other webinars. Before we start, I'd like to really briefly introduce myself. I'm Anna. I'm saying hi from Amsterdam. I would love to tell my computer I'm sitting here by the eye, but I have all the cables here. I have a background in museum education and cultural management, and a really, really big passion for games. And I found the perfect match when I started working for YIPP as a project manager. And YIPP is a creative studio full of software developers and engineers, software developers and designers, sorry. And we are specialized in designing and producing digital museum interactives and experiences. We're based in Amsterdam, but we do work all over the world. So what can you expect from the next 30 minutes that we're going to spend together? As Raquel said, I want to dive a little bit deeper into the question, how can we corona-proof digital museum interactives? In particular, I want to have a look at what sort of solutions do we have at our disposal to do that. And I want to give really practical, pragmatic solutions. At YIPP, we think that we're a really hands-on company, so we thought we also want to share very pragmatic and hands-on solutions for this situation. In the end, there'll be a Q&A, and one of my bosses, Wouter van der Zouwen, he's going to join me for that. And until then, I'm sure if you've been to any of the other webinars today, you know that there's a Ask a Question button at the bottom. Feel free to drop any question during the webinar in there, and we're going to visit them later. There'll also be a Zoom Hangout later on that you can find in the app, and we'll share it here as well. Me and my colleagues prepared a really lovely presentation, so I'm going to see if I can share my screen. 1 second. Share. And I hope this works. Okay. Okay, well, oops. Corona-proofing museum interactives. Well, at the beginning of a talk to talk about corona-proofing museum interactives, I thought it was really good to stand still for a second and to look at what do I mean by corona-proof and what by digital museum interactives, just so we're all on the same page and I'm not talking about something for 30 minutes and we all have a different image in our head. So what do I think of when I think digital interactive? Well, for me, they always have a physical component to them. This can be anything from a tablet to a steering wheel of a boat. And this, you can already guess, has the potential to make something not so corona-proof. Well, digital is already in the title. This will be some software and a really beautiful digital design. Interactive is a really important one. This means that the visitor has some sort of influence on the interactive. If you, if it's not interactive, but still digital exhibit, this could be, for instance, a video. But we at YIPP make something that's always interactive. And a really important aspect is the place. So all the interactives that we make are located in a specific place and are custom made for that place. So in some way, they're site specific. So it's not something that you can just play at home, so to say. Well, with the corona pandemic spreading across the world, we need to, the need has emerged to corona-proof every aspect of the museum visit, so to say. So how does corona spread? I'm sure you're all familiar with that, but just to put this here. So we can corona-proof museum exhibits by keeping a safe distance during the museum visit. So in the Netherlands here, people talk about the anderhalve meter samenleving. And I really like the concept that Korea used of the low-touch economy that they used in the webinar just now. So to prevent surfaces touched by humans, you can use contactless input for museum interactives. That just means that no part of your skin is touching any part of the exhibit. Or you can use personalized devices, which are then disinfected after each individual visitor has used them. Well, briefly, I want to give a really short shout out to all the museum professionals who have done such a really great job to corona-proof museums already and have come up with really creative solutions. The first weekend that museums have opened up again in the Netherlands, I went Saturday and Sunday to a different museum. And here you can see the new Nemo Science Center in Amsterdam, and they, well, you can see they're making a walking path here in the museum. I'm sure you've seen that in many other museums as well. And I was handed a small touch pen. I hope you can see that in my hand there. So a really smart, simple, and practical way to prevent me from touching the touch screen. On Sunday, I went to the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, and they commissioned the artist Carlos Morales, who they have on show right now, to produce limited edition face masks in local garment shops in Mexico City. And you can now purchase them at the museum. So this brings me to my next focus point, basically, that I'm going to look at is creativity. I really think that creativity is a big force in looking at how museums are corona-proofing themselves. For instance, I think the initiative of the limited edition face mask, that wouldn't have happened if it wouldn't be for corona. So it's really a result that emerged due to the particular circumstances that we're seeing right now. Well, I'm sure all of you are familiar with this concept that creativity thrives on constraints. Well, that's really at the heart of my presentation today. And I want to start by giving a really simple personal example before diving into more general solutions. This January, me and some colleagues, we participated in the Global Game Jam, and that is an international game design challenge where anyone can take part in within a team. And the concept is to create a game under really specific constraints. So the general constraint is that you have to make a game in 48 hours, and you have a theme. So this year's theme was repair. And what I love about it is that very unique games have come out of the Game Jam that I think otherwise would not have been created if it weren't for the really unique setting of this Global Game Jam. And what they do is they give you a list. They call it a free-for-all voluntary list of secondary constraints. And these are extra constraints you can choose as a team to make a more unique game. And as a team, we chose the diversifier to use no touch input. So we used no touch screen, sorry, no mouse and no keyboard, just for the fun of it, to push ourselves to do something really different. And as a result, this is the most important part of the game that we've made. We chose to use an infrared camera, and we made these really adorable controllers ourselves. And the result was a 2-player game where each player held one part of this heart. It has a reflective sticker on it that the infrared camera then picks up. So in short, I think we've made a really unique game that really came about due to the constraints that we choose for the game. These are 2 pictures of the game that we've had in the end. So what I really hope, and I'm sure you can see that I'm trying to make a really positive talk. I've tried to make a really positive talk on the corona crisis. So I do hope that the corona regulations can function sort of as a very own diversifier, one that we didn't choose from a list like we did for our game, but that regardless can push us to really reconsider our practice and to innovate in really positive ways. So let's see this as a chance and look at the positive potential that the crisis can offer to us then. A chance to innovate and to channel our creativity in really good ways. Maybe an opportunity to move past the touchscreen. We repeatedly hear from clients that they would like to have other exhibits that are less touchscreen based. So I think now is a really, really good opportunity for that, because no one wants to touch stuff, like Raquel said. Now is a really good moment because, well, it's really practical. If you do not use a touchscreen, you have a really good argument to try something new at the moment. And I think visitors are more open than ever to have a very different experience when they visit a museum. But how? Sorry. Well, this is really the heart of the presentation. Here I want to dive deeper into many different solutions at our disposal that are all corona-proof, that we can use in order to create new digital interactive exhibits. Okay, let's have a brief look at our diversifiers. So all the solutions that I'm presenting here enable visitors to keep a safe distance, and all of them either use contactless input or use a personalized device. I will point it out here and there, but I just want to emphasize this here in the beginning again, before looking at the solutions. Okay, let's dive in. The first solution that I have is an eye tracker. I'd be really, really curious to hear and to see how many of you have used this before in general, and how many have used this in a museum space. So now that we're all together digitally, I can't really look inside a room and see how many of you are nodding. So let me know in the chat maybe how many of you have used this before. I'm just really curious. Let's have a look. What can an eye tracker do? How does the input work if it's not touch? So an eye tracker works that basically, let's say it's a touch screen for your eyes, so it detects where visitors are looking. So using our eyes is super corona-proof. I'm sure we can all agree on that. And in what way could you use this technology to create multimedia museum interactives? Well, think of hidden picture puzzles, a sort of Where's Waldo exhibit, where you have to search for a particular item. And once you've found it, the camera will tell you that you found it and can maybe even show you how you've looked at it. You could also work with looking at different pieces of art. Think of showing visitors a picture of the Mona Lisa, and then you can see, do visitors first look at her smile or look at the mountain landscape in the back? You can show people the pattern of how they've looked. You can see in the image here in the picture that you're seeing here that it works really well to use this exhibit with a chair to adjust for the difference in height of visitors. Also a good one if you have children, really think of how you calibrate the camera, and if you adjust nicely for the height of the camera and the chair, you can make it a very wheelchair-friendly exhibit. For each solution, me and my colleagues put together a pros and cons overview slide. So to have all the information collected in the end. So pros, think it's a really surprising solution because you show visitors something that's really unconscious. People are not really consciously thinking of the way they look. So if you make that visible to them, it's a really surprising, a magical experience. Well, it's slightly less intuitive if you use a touchscreen, for instance, very straightforward how you use it. So with an eye tracker, it really works in a powerful way if you make it about looking, and then it can be more intuitive. So for each of the slides here, we've included the cost of all the hardware. Often people think that these fancy pieces of technology are really wildly expensive, and often they're not, sort of. So here, everywhere, I've included an estimate of what a module that we at YIPP like to work with costs. So here for an eye tracking, I've put in the Tobii Eye Tracker 4C, something we work with often. Just to give an indication, be aware this does not include the cost of furniture, other hardware you may need to make this work, like a computer design or software development. I think it's still really nice to just get a feel for the price of these solutions. The next solution is a light sensor, another one where I'm really curious if you've ever encountered this in a museum before. For this one, I suggest you use your feet. How does a light sensor work? Basically, you can see it like an on-off switch. You either block the light or you let it through, and if you put a threshold on that, it detects whether there's light or not. You could also use your hands, but that just feels, and install it, for instance, in the wall, but it just feels less corona-proof. So my suggestion here to make it corona-proof is to install it on the floor and then use your feet. How could you use this in a museum for an interactive? You could use it really nicely in combination with a floor projection, and then you install the sensor in the floor, and you could, for instance, put up a question on the floor and take a poll. Do you like chocolate? Yes, stand on the left-hand sensor. No, stand on the right-hand sensor. And then depending on your answer, you trigger certain content like a video. Or in the example that you see here, it's a traveling exhibition, Knights and Castles, and you see a map of Europe. And first you even have a language choice, so you can choose a language with a sensor, and then you can choose a certain animation that you want to put on top of the map, like a route of trade, religion, or disease. As you can see here, you can use it together, and as you can also see here, nicely for corona proofing, you can place the sensors about 1.5 to 2 meters apart to make social distancing, well, to incentivize that in a way. And what you can also see in the image here is one of the small drawbacks of the sensors is they need to be installed on the floor. So for this exhibition, for this traveling exhibition, which is sort of with a medieval theme, they have this beautiful wooden floor. So it makes it really easy to install them in the floor. But if you do not have a specific floor setup, that could be a slight drawback. Yeah, so here in the pros and cons, I've put can be installed on the floor as a pro and as a con, because it's a pro for corona proofing, but it can be a con for installation. Here, the cost is a set of 8 sensors, and including the USB interface, and that is the connector that enables the sensors to communicate with a computer. And this is, again, something super affordable just in terms of hardware. Well, the next solution is a depth camera. We've seen these in other presentations before by Creo and by Create EU, for instance. And, well, it's really prone to create corona-proof exhibits with a depth camera. It's just super versatile. If you compare it especially to the eye tracker and the light sensor, yeah, it's a really, really versatile option. How does it work? You use your body as input, especially it tracks your body position and your body movement. Here in this example, you see it combined with a screen. So this is my colleague pretending to be a boat. And in this case, well, you can add skeleton tracking to the depth camera, and that's a piece of software. It's trained to recognize the pattern of human shapes. So here the camera is trying to, well, guess where my colleague's hands are and knees are, and then match it with him being a boat. But you can also combine it with a projection. Here, well, here the camera in the image is on the floor, but you can hang it in the ceiling, and then it works really well to track where people are located at, because it can track the height and it can detect where people are standing. And we've seen all sorts of examples already today on what you can do with that. What I love most about this choice is that it's so highly engaging. Compared to other exhibits, you do not have to have the visitor to press a start button, especially if you use it with a projection. Visitors walk into the space and they're immediately part of the experience, and that's just really magical and very engaging. And again, several visitors can play it simultaneously, and it's easier to keep a social distance if you feel it, if you play it, sorry, and it feels really intuitive. The con is occlusion. What is occlusion? Occlusion is something obscuring the user by standing in front of the line of sight of the camera. Think of the first example with my colleague pretending to be a boat. If I stood in front of him, then I would be obscuring the line of sight of the camera. This is, yeah, again, a really affordable camera, I think. And the real sense that we have put here is a really affordable and stable alternative to the discontinued Connect version 2, in case some of you are big fans of the Connect version 2. And Real Sense has just released some skeleton tracking. Well, I think this is a very familiar face in the museum as well, a tablet. And I'm sure I don't have to explain to anyone how a tablet works. So in terms of all the solutions that I'm presenting today, the tablet falls into the category of a personal device. So the input is the visitor's hands, but of course you then will have to disinfect each tablet after each individual visitor. In this image, well, we're suggesting, hey, a personalized device will work really well, because if you set up a tablet, it's a real good chance to use it all over the museum. And a big advantage of a tablet is you can put a lot of content in it, and a lot of in-depth content. And then it's really up to the visitor how much content they want to retrieve. Maybe I'm walking past a nice shell and I really want to learn the story about a shell. The friend who's also working with their tablet with me, they're not that interested in learning more about the shell, but they want to learn more about the bear skeleton next to it. So yeah, it really allows the visitors to retrieve the information that they're personally interested in. And that's really nice. It's also a possibility to implement augmented reality with a tablet. It's always nice. So looking back at the pros, yeah, you can use it all over the museum. It can be used by many visitors simultaneously, in the sense that you develop one application, and if you buy, depending on the amount of hardware sets you buy, maybe you buy 100 tablets, and they're all handed out simultaneously, then 100 visitors can use it simultaneously, which is super nice, of course. Yeah, freedom of movement, of course. Also, if you walk around with your own tablet, it's easier to keep a social distance. Well, two considerations, of course: you need to disinfect them and you need to charge them, so that requires staff and space. But, well, we're considering all the pros that you have with setting up a tablet. I think it's really worth it. The cost really depends on the amount of hardware sets that you want to purchase. So if you have a lot of visitors, you should probably buy quite some tablets to account for that. And it partly also depends on the model of the tablet that you choose. Okay, Leap Motion solution is quite uncommon still in museum spaces. So let's have a closer look at that. How does the input work? The input works with the visitor's hands and the hand movements. Leap Motion is really optimized to track your hands with very high precision, basically. And if we compare it to the depth camera that we looked at before, depth camera is really works really great with capturing a visitor's body and body movements. So Leap Motion works really well with tracking your hand and your hand movement. There's a picture of a test we've done at the office. You can see Walter van der Zouw is sitting there with his hand. What type of solutions, what type of exhibitions could you set up with that? A really good application would be simulation exhibits, I think. So think of games where you do an open heart surgery, or you use a pottery wheel to create medieval pottery. Now, any type of exhibit that could be, for instance, a simulation where you really want to track very detailed hand movements will just work really well. This is an example of an exhibit YIPP made in a science center in China. It's not very corona-proof because you can see it's a combination of a touch screen and a normal screen. And here you can alter, you can choose different atoms at the bottom, and then you can alter them using your hand and using Leap Motion. So I think the pros are really, it feels very intuitive because, well, we're humans, we love to use our hands, and using our hands will feel very intuitive. It's really surprising. It's a piece of software that people don't really come across in their everyday life. So it would be a really memorable thing if visitors play it in the museum. I'm going to explain this one. So a big drawback, or a drawback of the technology, is that you have three-dimensional input, right? You can move your hand across 3 dimensions. But if you, in a corona-proof world, use it with a screen, that is 2-dimensional output. So that can sometimes feel a bit strange, but still possible. The cost, again, this is something that feels, to me personally, really futuristic and is quite cheap. Okay, bring your own device. What do I mean with bring your own device? It's a web app on your phone. And this is not a groundbreakingly new idea, but it's a really good one and a really, really simple one for corona-proofing your museum. And I think I've heard the number a couple of times today, how many people have downloaded the, or have the Ecsite app. I think it was 400. And the Ecsite app is working exactly with that principle. So it's a mobile website that is optimized for mobile usage. And as you've seen with the Ecsite app, at least I have this on my phone, you have a small icon on the home screen of your phone. You don't necessarily have to do that with a mobile app, but you can. Well, visitors bringing their own phone is, of course, very corona-proof, because then the museum doesn't have to disinfect it after usage. And how does it work? Well, visitors will walk around and they can scan QR codes that the museums have put up with their phone, or they can insert a number. Think of like with an audio guide, you also insert a number. And a good thing is that all Apple phones have included a QR code scanner into the camera function of their phone already. Not all Android phones have that yet, but so for Apple cameras, for Apple phones, and a lot of Android phones, you do not even have to download a QR scanner anymore and then open that, but you can just use your camera. So that's really neat. And this is what the backend looks like a bit. So with a bring your own device web app, a museum would then get a CMS, and they fill it in with all the information. Again, this is more works more with the static content. Would fill in information like an image or text or videos or audio, anything they want to share. And then this is sort of what it would look like for a visitor. And it's interesting to see how does it compare to a tablet, or how does it compare to a mobile app. So compared to tablet, what visitors can bring their own device, very useful, and no need to spend money on tablets. No need to spend money on tablets, but you should probably still purchase a small set of hardware, just as a backup for visitors who do not have phones. No need, compared to a mobile app, you, as a visitor, you do not have to download an app to your phone, so you don't lose space on your phone. As a company, you do not need to make 2 versions, because you don't have to make a version for iOS and one for Android. You don't have to push the app in the App Store. That takes time because you have to wait for official approval. And there's no need for pricey maintenance, because iOS and Android, they will make updates every year, and then you have to change the software accordingly to match the updates that they publish. This is my overview slide. So loads of pros, sort of similar to the tablet pros. Again, allows for many visitors to use it simultaneously, so that's just a really big plus. The cons, well, there's no advanced augmented reality possible, because you have to program for the lowest denominator, so think that you also reach people who have an old phone, basically, and it relies on visitors bringing a phone. The cost here is a different cost, because there's no hardware involved here. So we've estimated what would it cost to make this in terms of development, design, everything, basically. What would it cost a client to set this up at their museum? And we've come full circle. This is the final exhibit, final solution, sorry, that I want to look at. It's the one that we had a look at with my game jam example. An infrared camera, and, well, as you can tell, maybe sort of my personal favorite. How does it work? Well, I already explained it briefly with the game jam example. It's an infrared camera, and it picks up an infrared marker, which is sort of a shiny surface. It works really well in the distance, and it works really well to track items. So that is sort of how it differs a bit, comparing it to the depth camera. Depth camera works really well with tracking people and, well, human shapes and movement. And an infrared camera works really well with tracking items, basically. And how can you make this? How can you use this for a corona-proof exhibit? Because there's different ways you could use it. Some are not that corona-proof. And I think it'd be really fun if you make controllers with it. So think back, what in the image here you see these shields being used as controllers. They're more expensive to make. I guess you could disinfect them after each individual usage. That would be possible. Or you could make really cheap controllers. Say you make 200 controllers, sort of like the hearts that you saw in the beginning earlier. And then you hand them out to visitors. And maybe there's several exhibits that use an infrared camera. And then it's a reoccurring theme, and visitors hand them in back at the end of their visit. That would be very corona-proof. Or even if you just have one exhibit, you make a lot of controllers and then you disinfect them after usage. So what are the pros? Well, you can also, again, thinking of the image before, you can easily keep a social distance using the exhibit. And what I love about it is that you can be really creative. You can sort of turn anything into a controller. I really like that. You still have to disinfect it after each visitor, as a slight con. And with 600 euros, you can get an OptiTrack Flex 3. Now, this is it. This is already the end of our presentation. At the bottom here, there should be a link appearing for you to download the presentation slides. If not, I'll have a look if it worked, and otherwise I'll copy the link in the chat window. But basically, what I want to leave you guys with is that I hope what you take away from this presentation is that this is a chance to explore new possibilities for the future, to make the most of the situation and of the boundaries that the situation has set upon us. Basically, I think maybe you've gotten, in the best case, you've gotten inspired, and when you plan your next exhibition, you're gonna sit down and you're gonna think, okay, what do I want my interactive to be? And maybe you will make a sort of decision tree like we've done here. Really nice tree that my colleague Anoop made with me. And you'll think, what do I want to get out of it? Which functionalities do I want? And then you're going to look for the solution that you think will best fit your idea. Thank you. This is it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hope this will work. Yes. Mute my screen sharing. Oh yeah, there's better.
Hi. Hey guys. So thank you a lot, Anna, for this wonderful presentation. And I'm gonna do some of the talking now because you've been on it for half an hour. Take a sip of water. So I wanted to get into some of the questions that we already saw appearing. Well, on the top here is from Michelle. Hi, Michelle. When people see a touchscreen nowadays, they have the reflex to touch it, and how can you stop them from touching? Well, I've been thinking about this for a little while because it's a very good question, I think. And the main solution for me would be in the interaction design of the entire exhibit. So you can take it into account on the screen itself. How you design the visual interface, but also in the physical design. So I think that needs to be a holistic solution where it's not a natural thing, the way that the screen is placed to instantly touch it. You can take it a bit further from the visitor and set up the exhibit in a different way. So I think this will really be a interaction design question, where you don't have the signifiers of, touch this screen. And you probably have to overdo it a little bit because, as you say, people are really used to being able to touch screens. I mean, my son, he when he was 2 years old, he used to touch the TV and then got angry, like, this is not working, why not? So definitely a good thing to keep in mind when you're designing corona-proof exhibits, or at least corona-proof exhibits. So the next question was from Clara Rice. How do you make? I think it was concerning the eye trackers. So how do you make these types of exhibits accessible to visitors who are partially sighted or visibly disabled? Also a very good question. Honestly, I don't know if it's 100% able to do that. I mean, the eye tracker will still track eyes because it uses also infrared light to see where your eyes are, and that won't impact it. But of course, you need to be able to see what's happening on the screen to be able to control it then. Blind people, they would obviously need a really radical, radically different solution, like a screen reader or something like that. The thing that you could do is, if there's a large percentage of visually disabled or partially sighted people that you have to cater to, you could consider making the visual design of itself very contrast rich and big. So no small letters, big clear indications where you need to operate it, and set up that you're not too far away from the screen. That's basically the things that I can think of that you could do. But definitely, yeah, it's not that good of a solution if you have to cater to a large audience that's visibly sighted, partially sighted or visibly disabled. Then the next question is from Bruno. Do you have any suggestions to turn non-digital interactives also corona-proof? Yeah, good question also. But as a company, we're really specialized in building digital interactives. We actually had that, I think, in the session title before, but it was a bit too long. And I also saw some discussion in the chat, like how about the rest? So I don't have an answer to directly to your question, but what our intent really is we're seeing all the museums working super hard to work with this new situation. And we realized that we can really help with making life easier, making things easier. So we've looked for options that can, are easy to corona-proof. So we do just a little part in making life easier, making museums more accessible in this new time. All right, then I have Louisa asking for a contact at Nemo. Yeah, if you get in touch through info@yip.nl, then we can definitely get you into contact with someone at Nemo. We just have to find the right person. And Reed, last question from the list at least. Does infrared camera work with something as simple as a reflective sticker? And are they affordable enough to let each visitor have one, and then they're able to make their own controller out of something like cardboard, or even put in a sticker on their hands? Yeah, it's true. This is just a reflective sticker. The infrared camera works together. Oh, Anna, I can hear myself now in your... the infrared camera looks at infrared light, so it doesn't get interference from projections or sunlight or changing light conditions. And the cameras that we use also have a infrared spot, so LEDs on them, shines light down, and then we use when you use reflective material, it can be a sticker like Anna just showed. Then it will shine the infrared light back. It will turn up really brightly, and then it makes the computer vision algorithms life much easier. So you can really clearly see that reflected. So it's a kind of long technical background, but yes, and I think it's a cool idea. Emil also liked the idea. Hi, Emil. Emil's one of our developers, and yeah, you could have visitors like in a maker shop make their own controllers and have that usable at the exhibits that you implemented this with, or you could also do, for example, a larger projected area. Yeah. Got one other question. How to deal with maintenance from Andreas. How to deal with maintenance robustness of such new technologies. Does the Leap Motion device run 24/7 without question? Yes. Yeah, we of course always deal with these kinds of questions, and when we we like to try out new hardware. One of the perks of the job is that we get to order all these new gadgets, and we get to try them out for a long time in the office, and all of the solutions that we just presented. We've also used in different exhibits, so we know they are robust and they can run for 24/7 without crashing. So yeah, just wondering if no, yeah, the answer is yes. Let's see. If there are, I think we're through with the questions. If there's something in the chat, well, thanks a lot for all the compliments to Anna, of course. Yeah. Okay. Then I think we're through all the questions.
Great. So, Walter, thank you so much. Anna, thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I know that there's some people signed up to your meetup, which is happening now at 4.
Yeah.
Everyone can keep up the conversation right now. You just go to the app and follow the link, and you'll meet Walter and Anna, and you can continue the discussion on corona-proofing museum interactives. So, well, bye for now, and I really hope to see you again in person in Stavanger. we are going to take another break so you guys can continue the discussion. As you know by now, you can use the Ecsite app to find other attendees and get social during the break. You can go to Anna and Walter's meetup. You can create your own. So go ahead. YIPP is hosting one now, and after we will go to the Turing exhibition session, and it's 18 speakers. See you soon.